Good evening, students. In this session of the video, we will learn about the political history of England, its strifes and conflicts, part 1. In this session, we will learn the impact of French Revolution on Romantic literature. The learning outcome of this session is to trace the development of the French Revolution from the monarchy through to Napoleon and its impact on British literature. The French Revolution was a watershed event in modern European history that began in 1789 and ended in the late 1790s with the ascent of Napoleon Bonaparte. During this period, French citizens raised and redesigned their country's political landscape, uprooting centuries old institutions such as absolute monarchy and the feudal system. The upheaval was caused by widespread discontent with the French monarchy and the poor economic policies of King Louis XVI, who met his death by guillotine, as did his wife Marie Antoinette. Although it failed to achieve all of its goals and at times degenerated into a chaotic bloodbath, the French Revolution played a critical role in shaping modern nations by showing the world the power inherent in the will of the people. Causes of the French Revolution were: as the 18th century drew to a close, France's costly involvement in the American Revolution and extravagant spending by King Louis XVI and his predecessor had left the country on the brink of bankruptcy. Not only were the royal coffers depleted, but 2 decades of poor harvests, drought, cattle disease, and skyrocketing bread prices had kindled unrest among peasants and the urban poor. Many expressed their desperation and resentment towards a reign that imposed heavy taxes. It failed to provide any relief by rioting, looting, and striking. A wave of revolutionary fervor and widespread hysteria quickly swept the countryside. Revolting against years of exploitation, peasants looted and burned the homes of tax collectors and landlords. In late August, the Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a statement of democratic principles grounded in the philosophical and political ideas of Enlightenment thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was condemned to death for high treason and crimes against the state to the guillotine. His wife Marie Antoinette suffered the same fate 9 months later. His death marked the beginning of a moderate phase in which the French people revolted against the Reign of Terror's excesses. The Directory's 4 years in power were riddled with financial crisis, popular discontent, inefficiency, and above all, political corruption. On November 9, 1799, as frustration with their leadership reached a fever pitch, Napoleon Bonaparte staged a coup, abolishing the Directory and appointing himself France's first consul. The event marked the end of the French Revolution and the beginning of the Napoleonic era, in which France would come to dominate much of the continental Europe. This is in brief the history of French Revolution. The French Revolution impacted the development of literature by creating new interests in nature and simplicities of life. The revolution brought an end to feudal rule and monarchies by advocating the right and supremacy of a person's free will. Writers were inspired by the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. French Revolution stood for individualism, which was a primary demand. The French Revolution was active in the creation of a new interest in nature and the elemental simplicities of life. It accelerated the approach of the Romantic era and the close of the Augustan school of poetry, which was already declining in the age of Wordsworth. Almost all contemporary poets, novelists, and playwrights were influenced by French principles and by the remarkable events in France. French Revolution affected Romantic poetry. It also influenced British society, and beliefs of liberty and freedom were cherished in life. Romantics appreciated imagination, emotion, and nature, and these were prompted by the French beliefs in a newly profound manner. Romantic poets had broken down boundaries not just in poetry but in the lives of the British as well. Women were perceived as equal and they were raised to obtain knowledge. The well known poets of the Romantic era, influenced by France's Revolution, were Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Mary Wollstonecraft. Romanticism was the greatest literary movement in the period between 1770 to 1840. This movement was influenced by France's Revolution and it meant the shift of sensibility in art and literature and was based on interdependence of man and nature. It emphasized the importance of feeling, emotion, and imagination rather than reason or thought. The Romantic period of literature came into being in direct reaction against a variety of ideas and historical happenings taking place in England and Europe at that time. One being the French Revolution and also Napoleonic Wars and their painful economic downfalls and also the union with Ireland. Another political movement known as Chatsum also helped to improve social recognition and condition of the lower classes. The Reform Bill was passed later after Romanticism period, which suppressed slavery in the British colonies, curbed monopolies, lessened poverty, liberalized marriage laws, and expanded educational facilities for the lower classes. It accepted and despised the current philosophy of utilitarianism, a view in which the usefulness of everything, including the individual, was based on how beneficial it was to the society. Okay, dear students, the whole of Romantic history was greatly influenced by this France Revolution, and in the later sessions, you will be able to understand the impact of this revolution in not only poetry, novel, but also its social life. Thank you for watching the video.